I'm really excited about my guest today. His name is Kyle Livingston. He is the president of Seven Figure Industries, and we were just catching up before we pressed record here. We're about to find out about a pretty amazing story, and I haven't heard this story either, Kyle, so we're going to dig into that and so much more with you today. Thank you for being here. Welcome. First of all, where are you coming to us from today?
Man, thanks for having me. I am just outside of Nashville in Franklin, Tennessee. Been here for a couple of years, and it's gorgeous here, man. We love it.
Yeah, Nashville, Tennessee. Going to stay there?
Yeah, that's the plan. We traveled around for a couple of years outside of leaving California in 2016. Tried to figure out where we wanted to live. And when I say we, I mean my wife and I. Yeah. And we landed here about 2.5, 3 years ago. And like, this is the place we'll call home. We're looking to buy some land, build a house.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll stay here for the foreseeable future.
Nice. We were saying also California state income taxes, Tennessee state income taxes, or lack thereof. I live in New York State, so we can reminisce about the blue state property state taxes
hammered,
forever.
Man.
But, yeah,
I joke with people. I tell everybody I gave myself a 20% raise just by getting out of California.
Immediately, it's amazing. And yeah, as an entrepreneur, you can make the same money living in Nashville or in Tennessee that you can make in California or New York. So it makes total sense.
Everything's online that we do. So it's like
everything's
I can work
online.
Anywhere.
Internet's the same. It's probably might even be cheaper there.
For sure is.
That's awesome, man. All right, Kyle, we're gonna get to know you. I'm gonna get to know you, and we're gonna have a good conversation. So let's kick this off. And first of all, let's hear about something that you nerd out about.
Dude, I nerd out about like the game of business. I think business in general is a big game. Like you see like Monopoly, there's a game that I really love called Cash Flow by Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki. They built it or released it in like early 2000s and love playing that game. And it's in essence, like, how do you get out of the rat race and start living your dream? And so one thing that I nerd out about, man, is like business in general. And I think there's a difference between entrepreneurship and business where, people who are entrepreneurs can go out and create things and do things. And they typically are the builders, the growers. But like, I enjoy the operating, the making profitable, the levers, the details, the segments in business that you can actually pull from. So like, to me, that's what I nerd out on. Like if I'm driving in the car, I'm listening to something about business, listening to something around like how to get more out of what you currently have versus having to go and get more. So that's probably one of the biggest things I nerd out about.
I consider myself more of a 0 to 1 builder.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally appreciate I really appreciate the personality type. It's more like, how do I squeeze every last thing out of what I'm already doing well? Mm-hmm. And how do I get even more out of that? Before you started Seven Figure Industries, where's your background?
Dude, so I started, I've always kind of been an entrepreneur at heart, right? Started doing like the traditional, like mowing lawns as a kid, washing cars as a kid, moved into a corporate job in the telecommunications construction space straight out of high school. And
nice.
Quickly realized that like, I'm not a very good employee. I want to be compensated for the milestones and targets that we hit. And at 21 years old, I was the highest producing project manager for this company out of all 20 something offices they had in US and Canada.
Wow.
And I remember going to my boss and being like, hey man, I just want to make what the other project managers are making. And I'm doing 3 or 4 times what they're doing. And he goes,
like, but no, you don't get that because you're too young. And you're like, but it's output based.
Too young to make this kind of money.
Hilarious.
I quit right there on the spot. I'm like, screw this guy, man. Like, I'm making millions of dollars for this company a month. I'm out. Like, I'm not going to do this. And from there, I started my first tower construction business. And it was like my first business as an adult that I got into.
Yeah.
And did pretty well in that one. Exited that one. Started up another one with a partner. Exited that one shortly thereafter. Did it for a third time. Did pretty well. And then the fourth time, I completely lost my ass and lost everything in the matter of 9 months. Yeah. And so I came from a commercial construction background that transitioned into the online space, which we can jump into that story in here in a bit.
Yeah, very cool. So you're talking like you originally came like an American Tower type. You were building
so we
wireless infrastructure.
We build the towers for American Tower. We do the maintenance for AT&T. We do the upgrades for Verizon, all that stuff. Yeah.
Interesting. This isn't about me, except I spent 11 years working in wireless telecom. I started at Nextel, and then it became Sprint Nextel, and then I spent 3 years at AT&T. So I actually know quite a bit about that space, and I went through a CDMA upgrade, Sprint CDMA upgrade, and all that stuff. It's so cool.
CDMA upgrades back in the day. That's when I first had gotten into it. It was like
WiMAX, baby. It's the future. WiMAX, except no.
God, now we're in 5G.
Nope.
Yep.
So Kyle, what's something that you're comfortable doing that you know there's other people out there that are like, I will not do that. It's just way outside of their comfort zone.
I am perfectly okay going into tons and tons and tons of debt if I know that it's being leveraged in a way to make me money, where most people just won't do it. Just won't do it. Dude.
This is so ironic because, and I'm not implying that this is you at all, but I literally just listened to a long podcast on Enron. And if you know, like, I'm guessing you probably studied what they were doing, where they had these shell companies where they would go and become both the lender, and they were the lender. Yeah, they're like on both sides of the transaction, which is just wildly illegal, coupled with, we have this highly leveraged debt. Let's like offshore it to this other thing, which that's the thing that took them on. But man, that is such a cool answer. And the very first time I've ever heard that, because most people, I would say that is something that most people do not have the appetite for.
Yeah, not at all.
Not at all,
dude. Like, in my second company, I took on $2.2 million in debt to build it.
In debt? Is this structured? Is this structured debt that's leveraged against the business assets? Like things that are like...
No, initially it was hard money.
Wow.
It was hard money that I turned into a partnership just because of the opportunity that was there. I could take the 2.2 and go make 5. That's just a no-brainer. If I can arbitrage your money and double it and pay you back your money plus a percentage and get the middle, like, that's business at the end of the day. Like, Coca-Cola takes, like, if think about this, Starbucks. Like, do you have a Starbucks app?
I do.
Do you load the app with cash?
I do not, but I have.
So technically, that's Starbucks taking on debt to go buy property, right? And all they're doing is just arbitraging your cash. And like, if you look at business at a high level, this is why I go back to like the game of business. If you look at business at a high level, that's all it is. It's cash arbitrage, period. I don't care if you're selling Coca-Cola. I don't care if you're selling coffee. I don't care if you're selling tower laborers. It's cash arbitrage, and that's the name of the game.
I mean, the best example of this, like the best example of this is gift cards. I pay you at Target. I pay you right now for money that may or may not use later. And then like, I'm sure that like the capital equation or the actual financial equation in there is quite scientific.
I'm sure.
Like the conversion rate of like 63% of all people who spend $10, we know that of that $11 of that, or sorry, like of $10, like we know that like $1.10 will never be used in our store. Right. And then that's free cash flow. Super interesting. Free cash flow. Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah, man. So if we look at the other side of that question, man, like, by the way, like taking on tremendous debt is the first time in 157 episodes that anybody's ever answered that. And I've heard a lot of the same answers, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah.
Love it. So now I'm really curious, other side of that question. What's something that you are uncomfortable with that you know somebody else is in their comfort zone?
I am really uncomfortable asking for like calls to action in marketing. As odd as that is, dude, like I just want you to see what we're doing and just say, hey, I want to work with you. Like I am super uncomfortable. And that's honestly, it's still a struggle I have in my business to this day, is like marketing and acquisitions. Like it's still a problem I have.
Yeah.
But like doing organic or doing a post and saying like, hey, like come buy my stuff, you know, and if like, I hate it where I have like friends that are just like, dude, they just hammer it 3, 4, 5, 10 times a day. And I'm just like, why does that make me so uncomfortable? It probably comes from like my network marketing days back early on, where I asked everybody and their mother to come at a Tupperware party or something.
Yeah. Man, I'm curious about that too. It's just going to think out loud here with you. I wonder if it, for somebody who is so operationally focused, like you're a operational person. So for you, the proof is in like the operational pudding, as they say. And sales and marketing, like marketing sometimes has like, you have no idea if it's working or not until you do. So I would imagine that that's partially uncomfortable because the work should speak for itself, but that's kind of that's why some people are great. Yeah. Like, right. Like, we do good work.
People who win and lose. Like the product can be awesome, but if nobody knows about it, dude, I honestly think it comes back from my tower days. And like, as an adult, that was the businesses that I ran for up until 2016. And I never had to market or sell. I just had more opportunity than what I knew what to do with. And so my entire business career my strategy was never around how do I get more clients? How do I get more customers? How do I get more? It was always about how do I make my shovel bigger? Like, how do I get more of the work? I can take on 100 sites, but I only have the capacity to do 40. How do I increase my capacity without driving myself crazy? That's always been the problem I've had to solve. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. Like, I would rather solve that problem than solve the problem of like, come buy my stuff. Like,
pay attention. Somebody pay attention to what I'm doing.
Exactly.
So what I'm saying is what I'm hearing you say, Kyle, is you're not spending the majority of your time trying to write compelling sales copy.
Definitely not, man. Definitely not.
You're like, that is my version of hell. No, thank you.
Yeah. Like, I'll do it because I have to, it's part of being a business owner, but like, I definitely am not stoked to have to write scripts for content. And like that doesn't fire me up.
Yeah.
Like, what fires me up is like seeing a fat deposit hit the bank account for clients.
There you go.
Like, that's the stuff where I get my dopamine from.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that you can always hire for all that stuff quite easily.
Yep.
Which is cool.
Yep.
So now we're going to move and we're going to talk a little bit about what you care about. I call this the what you care about question.
Okay.
So I gave you 5 minutes, and we're not looking for the speech here. I had one guest who was like, so you want me to give a 5-minute speech right now? I'm like, no. I mean, you can if you want to. I'm not going to say, but that's not what we're looking for. It's more like you get 5 minutes, Kyle, and you can speak to the whole world about whatever you want. What would you speak to us all about? And what would you want us to do with that information at the end of that 5 minutes, which is ironic because we're looking for a call to action here.
Ideally, I would talk about clarity of leverage.
Clarity of leverage.
Yep. And so being really clear around like going back to the business world, being really clear about your business and understanding what levers you have in your business that you can pull at any given time. Ideally, they can get to a place where, they can open up a dashboard, see their entire business as an owner and be like, oh, my business is failing here. I need to fix this one area before I focus on anything else today. And giving that ability back to the people listening, I think would be huge. And call to action, I guess, would be buy my stuff. No, I'm just kidding. Call to action would probably tell them to like go and spend some thinking time around the data that they want to be pulling out of their business and that they should be pulling out of their business.
Yeah.
So that they can actually make decisions out of data and not just like emotion and conjecture, because that's how you get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. Which is also how most people make decisions most of the time.
Dude, I was literally having a conversation with somebody today. They're an online business. They do about $300K a month in cash collections, and they have zero KPIs for their business. Like zero. They're literally the epitome of flying by the seat of their pants, doing well, right? Because they have a good good internal compass. They're plugged in, but like they're getting to a place now where it's like, dude, 1 or 2 mistakes emotionally will just take you out of the game.
Yeah.
It's like, we need to get data in your business, or it's like you're flying blind at 250 miles an hour.
Yeah. So they're running almost a $4 million business and with no metrics and analytics, that they're just, interesting.
Yeah, it's wild.
I
see it all the time.
I'm not surprised. I don't know if I saw it or maybe I heard it. It's a Brene Brown quote. I think it's a Brene Brown quote. I thought this is really fascinating. And she says something like, one of the great mistakes that humans make, and I'm going to butcher this, is that we believe we are logical creatures who sometimes have feelings. And the truth of it is we are built that humans are actually feeling creatures who sometimes have logic. And you go, oh no, but like people like argue that. And I'm like, okay, let me tell you, what's stronger, when you can think your way to a problem or when you feel strongly about something or you have a strong emotion? And I've never met a human whose emotions won't win out when they get to that certain level. Oh yeah.
And you're 100% right. And that's why you have to have reliable, definitive data. Because regardless of how you feel, right? Like regardless of how you feel about this, the data might say something different.
Right.
And if the data says something different, as a business owner, you've taken a pledge to pay attention to that. And if you don't, in my opinion, you're just being reckless.
Yeah.
And you're putting other people's resources and other people's lives. Like, think about the people employed at a $4 million a year business.
I'm sure they have a pretty decent sized staff.
Decent sized team. And like, they're putting all of those lives at risk every single month because they're literally flying without a cockpit, without a set of gauge clusters, whatever analogy you want to use. And it's like, dude, that's negligence in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a brief commercial break, and I know we're going to get more into this and more after this. Thanks, Kyle.
The Talking to Cool People podcast is brought to you by Jason Frizzell Coaching. Jason works with amazing people who are looking to find and develop their passion and purpose and create their journey to wherever it is they want to go. Check us out at jasonfrizzell.com, Facebook, or on Instagram. Jason loves hearing from anyone who thinks it would be cool to connect, to be coached, or to be a guest on our show. Email him at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com or DM him on Facebook and Instagram. And now, back to some more amazing conversation on Talking to Cool People.
All right, Kyle, we're back. So I mentioned before that you've got a story about your background, what's led you here today.
Amen.
We're not looking for just this story, and you've given me a very small sneak preview, and I think it's a pretty compelling place to start. So I'm going to ask you the question I ask all my guests, and then think we're going to go here as my guest. Like, so what is it that you want us? What is it that you want the audience to know about you?
I think I'll tell you the story, but I'll start with the hook, right? Try practicing my marketing.
There you go.
Like, regardless of what your circumstances are, you're always in control. Like, no matter what, you're always in control. And for me, like, early on, obviously as children, like, I'm not going to give you the whole like verbatim story, but like, dude, I was left at a yard sale after my birth mom, who was addicted to drugs, tried to have an abortion 3 times. She left me at a yard sale at 12 weeks old. And it wasn't a good place to grow up in. Like, the city was kind of a really bad city. So I kind of grew up in what I refer to as the ghetto, like most people would. And dude, I had every opportunity in life to go left. I had every opportunity. My family members were on drugs. Like, I had every opportunity to go left, and I didn't. And I stayed the course, and I stayed going, and like went through a divorce early on in life, lost a business. And like, dude, I've literally had to like grind my way to where I'm at today. Like, nothing was handed to me. Nothing was easy. And everybody kind of relates to that story. And everybody has that story where I think most people are like self-made, but it's like some people just happen to have it a little easier than others. And fortunately for me, my life was the furthest thing from easy that you could possibly imagine. But what that built in me was a version of somebody who will just show up and like, dude, I'll take on the debt. I'll go to the business meetings. I'll challenge people. Like, I'll do the things that are really uncomfortable for most people because like, I've just had to have thick skin. I've had to be in the board meetings. Like, going back to towers, I remember we had a catastrophic failure on a tower one time. Luckily, nobody got hurt. Nobody died. But I'm 21 years old getting yelled at in a board meeting with the head of AT&T. Like, this dude's just screaming at me. And it's like, all I wanted to do is crawl under the table and cry. Most people would have collapsed under that pressure. And so I think what I would convey to the audience is like, regardless of where you're at, regardless of the situation, regardless of where you come from, like, you are in control no matter what, regardless of what's thrown at you or the hand you were dealt. Like, it is your choice to either move forward and go right or stop and go left. And it is 100% up to you.
This reminds me of an interview I heard of Dwayne Wade. He was on Armchair Expert, where similar, I don't know if you've ever read about Dwayne Wade, but he grew up in the projects of, I think he grew up in Cabrini Green in Chicago. His mom was a drug addict. I think he grew up with no father, and he kind of said the same thing, that he had every opportunity to not end up, including, if I'm not mistaken, he didn't, he played at Marquette. He didn't get in the first time because his grades were so bad, and he had to keep going back and keep going back. So, what do you think it was that kept you making the decisions that kept you moving forward? Because I think I don't identify with your story at all for myself personally. It's just not how I grew up, and I don't feel that way. And I'm sure some people here go, oh yeah, that resonates, and other people don't. But regardless of that, do you know what it was that had you continue to stay on the path of creating something different? Do you know what that drive or what that was in you?
Well, it was a couple of things that it changed fairly quickly as I became an adult. Initially, when I first started, it was like to not be poor. Like, if I wanted a new pair of shoes, like, I didn't have to wait until next like school year to buy them.
And that's how it was for you when you were a kid.
Dude, like I was wearing my brother's hand-me-down clothes, and I was going to this school, and like, dude, I'm a redhead, and like I get made fun of enough being a redhead. Like there's a pick a ginger day, like you know, like, and so I had enough of that kind of growing up. But like, you know, if I remember I was in 4th grade and I wanted a new pair of DVSs, you know, the big old puffy DVSs that everybody wore. And it was like, my parents like, no, bro, you get New Balances from Walmart. Like if you want something else, like I'm not buying you $80 shoes. You're in 4th grade and your feet are growing like tanks. Like I'm not doing it. If you want it, go make the money. And so in 4th grade, I was like, oh, I got to go find $80 to buy my shoes. Like I'm not going to get made fun of for these stupid New Balances anymore. And so initially it started as like, dude, I just don't want to be poor. And growing up, dude, like I'd go home and like, you know, my parents did the best that they possibly could with what they had. And I loved them to death. Like I'd go home, dude, and it's like our power shut off until dad gets paid next week. Yeah. Or our water shut off till dad gets paid next week or something. It's like, dude, I'm doing homework by candle lights and flashlights and headlights and taking a bath with pool water. We heat it up on the stove. And like, so it first came from like, I just don't want to be poor.
Yeah.
And then I also then noticed that the decisions my two of my older brothers and my older sister were making, those decisions were landing them in prison and getting them stabbed and leaving them out on the streets and like and I'm like, okay, that's not the path. And so I'll just work and I'll work and work and work and work. That's the only thing I know how to make money, right? I can wash cars, do lawns, I can do all this stuff, and I can make money to not be poor. And I remember, dude, I was 16 years old, maybe 15, and I was probably 15 and a half, 16, somewhere around there early on. And I went and mowed lawns and washed cars, and I'm sitting on my bed and I'm counting the money that I'd made from that weekend. And I'd gone and knocked on all the doors and got all this set up. And my mom walks in the room and she kind of sits down next to me. She's like, oh, are you counting all the money you have saved up? I'm like, no, I'm just counting the money I made from yesterday and today. And her jaw drops, dude. And she's like, I don't want white as a ghost. And she sits down and she starts counting it with me. And she's like, you made more money than dad did today.
Amazing.
I was like, shit, this is broken. I can't do this. And so that's what kind of pushed me to get out of where I was at and kind of move into a different spot. And then even as an adult, it was running away from being poor. And it wasn't until I actually had the opportunity to realize, like, man, there's a lot more than just money. There's a lot more than just the proverbial 10K a month. Like I could go make 100K a month, and then what can I do with that money? And that's where I'm kind of at now is like, if I can go make 100,000 in a month and then take some of that money and go rescue women and children who are being sold in sex slavery, like I'll do that versus just making 10K and chilling with the rest, you know, just hanging out.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah, man. So it shifted from running away from being poor to seeing how far I could push it to now my motivation is simply like, I know there are women and children locked in cages in part of the United States and all over the world today.
Yeah.
Waiting for somebody to fund their rescue. Yeah. Like that's the stuff that motivates me now.
Man, I love the terminology of running away from being poor.
Mm-hmm.
I hear the tangible, factual part of that. I also hear the emotional part of that too. Yeah. I like the story of what it means to be poor, what it means about you and all that. So before we move on here, Kyle, I was going to ask you, I think you mentioned it's just you and your wife. So I'm asserting you don't have any children at the moment.
I do have one with my ex-wife, lost a marriage throughout all of this.
But you do have, so you do have a child. Okay, great. So there we go. How old is your child?
It'll be 10.
10. Okay. So she's like moving into like close to hustler if she wants to be mentality, right? Like I feel like around that age.
Yeah.
What do you want her to know, or any parents listening and their kids either have this drive or their kids don't have this drive? What do you want parents to know?
Your kids are going to figure you out someday, man.
Yeah. I have 2 kids. That's very true.
Like if you tell them like, hey, go run and pursue your dreams and go chase after your goals. And like, you could be anything you want. And you're sitting at home pissed off because you're a nurse at the local hospital. Like that's as much as you've gotten in life. Like your kids just aren't going to believe you. So like, if you're the person that's going to tell them that they can have whatever they want, you better damn well be living a life pursuing whatever the hell it is that you want, or you're ruining your future's you're ruining their reputation and like their believability with you. Yeah. They're going to turn 18 and be like, well, mom said I could be whatever I want, but she's not whatever she wanted. So I don't really believe it's true.
Yeah. Is your daughter a hustler?
To be honest with you, man, I don't know. I haven't talked to her in 6 years. California is brutal when it comes to that kind of stuff. So that's,
My guess is
as I was running away from being poor.
Yeah.
Quick story is I was so focused on the money, so focused on the work, so focused on the doing that I didn't pay attention to the marriage. I didn't pay attention to anything else, So
that's probably a whole nother podcast episode is how to actually have it all.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle. So now let's, I know you're a podcaster as well, so I'm sure you have guests, you ask people things. I'm curious, what do you want to ask me? We just met about 40 minutes ago. What do you want to ask me that I can answer for you and everybody listening?
Yeah, man. What is your motivation in taking the time and energy and effort and resources, putting it together, a podcast and interviewing people like me? Like, what is your goal? Like, what do you want to bring to the world with this?
Yeah. I've had this version of this. I've had this question quite a few times, but never framed in this way. So I really appreciate the way you frame. I mean, I like it when anybody asks me, but most people I think it says a lot about your personality. Most people are like, hey, why do you do the podcast? And I like how you frame that. So this podcast I do for a really simple reason. Because I like it.
Yeah.
It's fun. And I'm a people person. I generally like most people. So selfishly, it's a great way to meet people like you.
Yeah.
And have a conversation. And I'm always learning from my guest, as anybody who interviews anybody will tell you. You should always be learning from your people. I also like it because it allows people that wouldn't know you to know you in some way. Whether they listen and they go like, I got to check this guy out. And they go, oh, he's exactly what I need for my business to scale up. Or they don't, or they go, hey, like there's something from your story and from what you do that's going to impact somebody somewhere from listening to this show.
Yeah.
Somewhere. So, and I don't, quite frankly, I don't know most of what it is because people don't tell it. Like most people are like, hey, I heard Kyle and then I hired him and blah, blah, blah. Like most people don't tell you that stuff, but I know it to be true. So I do it. And then like what drives me to continue to do this is like my childhood story. When I was a kid, I wanted to be the host of the Tonight Show. Yeah. I'm old enough where I don't know how old you are. I'm 45. So that was Johnny Carson. And then it became Jay Leno when I was a kid. So what do you do when you become an able-bodied adult who has the resources to buy some equipment and some software? You're like, let me start a talk show, which people are like, hey, so like, people ask me this and it's a really valid, like, hey, who listens to this? What's the intention? What's the point? I'm like, I don't know. What's the entertainment, get to know people, have fun, learn something, have the audience learn something. So I really view this as it's a talk show, right? Like where you and I are going to get to know each other. If some of the people I've interviewed my wife, she's interviewed me. So some people I know extremely well. Other people we show up and I go, hey, you seem like a cool dude. Let's have a fun conversation and have fun. Yeah. And I love doing this. And one of the pieces of feedback I do get on the show is like, hey, we can tell you're having fun. And like, for me, that's enough.
Yeah.
Like people are like, oh, when are you going to monetize it? I'm like, if anybody knows anything about the podcasting industry, making a podcast, like, and you're a monetizer, right? Like monetizing a podcast that ends up being like your primary source of income is insanely hard to do.
Insanely hard.
You've got to be basically famous or or be funded or sponsored by a corporate sponsor or something, which this isn't, and I don't really care. It's just fun.
Yeah. I love that, man.
That's my intention for doing it. I think I was just mentioning to you, this is, I think this is my 158th recording in 3 years and 2 weeks. I also like it from it's my body of work in the world too. In some ways, you want to know about me, people want to do business with me, and go and like listen to me interview Kyle or interview my wife or interview Travis, our mutual acquaintance. Like, doesn't really matter. And it's like it's a everlasting legacy in the world in some way. Yeah. And if it changes, and I have people all the time, they'll be like, hey, like I heard this episode with blank and I really got a lot out of it. Good enough for me. That's all I need. And I think that's one of the things I like about podcasting is it is a low cost, low barrier to entry. So it doesn't feel like high stakes to me versus like you're saying, I don't have to go into debt to do a podcast. I don't have to go and like leverage like 30 hours a week. I just get to like, spend a few hours a week on it and do it. So that's why I do this.
I love that, man. Well, and there's that fuzzy ROI that exists that you can't quite put your, like, I'm sure you've had people message like, do this part change my, or this did this for me, and this, but like that happens so much more that you don't even know about.
Oh my God. Yeah. So many times. Or sometimes people, and for my business, people will go, hey, actually, before I got on the phone with you, I listened to your conversation with Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why? They're like, oh, I just want to see what you're about. Like, it's like people can get a real life vibe.
Yeah, 1,000%. Like I just took over I just brought on a client this month, and we took over their sales team. And part of taking over the sales team is showing up as a leader and challenging people, and having to shake people up a little bit. Well, one of the guys went and found me in my podcast and was listening to my podcast and stuff, and he came back to the call. He's like, "Hey, man, I just went and binged all your content. Like, I'm 100% on board. Whatever you tell me to do, I'm doing." I was like, "Great." So having done the content prevents me from having to convince this guy that it's the right move for the business. He's just sold, ready to rock and roll, and is now just doing whatever is necessary to get to the result. And it's really cool. So it was a fun ROI I would have never expected.
Yeah. Versus like, who the F is this Kyle guy? Oh, we hired his team. He's going to tell me what to do. He's like, oh, but I actually think, that's the other thing that's cool about like just being out there. And this kind of goes to the marketing is like, people know I have a point of view. Mm-hmm. Just like that person knows you have a point of view on what you're being. It sounds like you're being paid to consult and like basically run the sales team. He knows you have a point of view. You're not just coming in. And like, my guess is when he heard that, he's like, oh, and then you showed up here and it was actually authentic, which immediately builds trust and credibility, which is very easy not to have when you go in and you take over a sales team. That's probably one of the most arduous things you can do is like, who the F is this dude? And who's he going to tell me how to sell more?
Right. Especially when you have big egos and big things that come along with sales in general. Like it's literally been a cushion for me going into these companies. And it's like, hey, like here's where we're taking you. If you don't like how I'm on my podcast, like you're definitely not going to like working with me.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Oh. I love that.
Yeah, man.
Great 100%. Question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Kyle, what are you passionate about?
Man, I'm going to be very vulnerable here. I'm actually still trying to figure that out from like I had gotten so consumed in like the game of business and things. Obviously I am passionate about having a healthy marriage with my wife and doing those things, but like I really enjoy, there are a lot of things that I really enjoy that I haven't done over the last few years that I probably want to get back into. Like one of the things I really love to do is riding motorcycles. Like that's one of my favorite things in this world to do. And I haven't rode a motorcycle in probably 3 years. And so one of the goals for me in 2023 is like finding out what I'm now passionate about at this point in my life and like actually enjoying that. And so it's probably not a great answer, but that's definitely something that is to be determined for me this year from like a hobbies, passionate side of things. From a just selfish side of things, I'm always trying to become a better version. And my buddy, I have a really best friend of mine, his name is Anthony. And we were talking probably about a year ago. And he goes, he's having a conversation with his wife or something. This whole thing came up. He's like, why are we doing this, dude? Like, why are we continually to do this? Like, business is tough. He was going through a rough season. Like, I just had a rough month. Like, he's like, why in the heck are we doing this? And I was like, to see how good we can get. Like, selfishly, just to see how good we can get at this. And so for me, it's like challenging those things. And, we had a pretty brutal Q4, to be honest. We had a pretty rough Q4. And so like some of this is like me even having to reignite passions around parts of my business that like going into marketing, like I have to become passionate about marketing or my business isn't going to thrive. Like there are things that I have to create passions around. But overall, man, I would say learning and just becoming a better human. Like if on video right now, if you guys are watching, like I have a bookshelf behind me of all my favorite books. And like, I enjoy learning and figuring out like, what's this person's perspective or what's this person's point of view on this topic and seeing those things. Cause like, I'm the first to admit I do not know everything. And the moment I thought I knew everything, I lost everything. And so I'm really big on like figuring out who knows more about something that I do and going and learning from them.
Yeah. I'll add my perspective on this because if you look at my website, I do a lot of executive coaching and things. And I think you're living proof of this. And I am looking here in case people are just listening. I'm seeing all these great books. I have a bunch of books behind me too. Mm-hmm. What makes people great is when they take all those books behind you and they read them, then they go and like, what's true for me? What's true? What's going to work? Not what's going to work for me from an easy, but like, okay, so now I've got somebody else's point of view. How do I integrate that into what I know to be true about myself? Mm-hmm. As opposed to, my very first coach used to call books shelf help books. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Cause you read this thing, you're like, now this is the book. And I don't know if you have friends like this and I was like this for a portion of my life too. It was like, oh, this is the sales book I'm going to read. It's going to be the book that's going to have me know the things to do when I'm selling more so I can sell more and make more money and be more successful. And what generally ends up happening is you read it and you either forget or you try it, and because it isn't your own truth, it doesn't actually really work.
Yeah.
So,
1,000%.
my guess is if you and I got to know each other even more and I looked at those books, I probably know some of them. I go in, hey, how did you incorporate this into your own life in a way that's authentic to Kyle? And you go, oh, this is how I made it mine. This is how I use it in my business, as opposed to like the process.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Yeah.
Because dude, everybody is different. Every business is different. I tell business owners this all the time when they're looking for coaches or looking for people. It's like, dude, you know your nuance of your business better than anybody else will ever know it. Like you actually have the answers. You just need to ask better questions.
Yep. Ask better questions. And if you don't know the questions to ask, go hire somebody to ask them to you.
Exactly. Because you already know the answers.
Yeah. So Kyle, what are you most proud of?
That's a really good question. Outside of a happy and healthy marriage, so something that's totally selfish, is how far, and this is going to sound super pompous, but how far I've come from where I've been.
Mm-hmm.
And even when setbacks happen, when I've lost everything, I'm really proud of my ability and I'm kind of given that where Snoop Dogg was like, I want to thank me speech. Have you seen that?
It's great.
Dude, I'm definitely proud of it. It's just, that's something for me. It's like, there were some demons that I had to battle and really get through to get to this place. And even when I'm not very happy sometimes with where I'm at, I'm still really proud of where I've landed up from where I've started.
Yeah. I want to ask a question about the marriage. Just quickly here. How do you define a happy and healthy? I hear the happy is like a feeling. How do you find for you as somebody who is divorced or is divorced, I should say, how do you define healthy in your current marriage?
Dude, for us, it's communication. Can we communicate about the hard things without them becoming a problem? So do we have open communication? Is she feeling loved, supported, happy? Is she in a place where she's not just feeling like she's carrying dead weight or I'm carrying dead weight, or we're both contributing to a mutual goal? So I think the health comes from, because there's always seasons. You always have seasons of ups and downs. But I think the health comes from, are you pursuing a mutual goal and are you both happy with the progress?
Yeah.
Because I would say, having been divorced, one of the biggest things was, we got married very young, but we learned pretty quickly, our intentions and goals in life were a little different and they were misaligned. And regardless of how far and happy and, whatever we ended up doing, we were still going towards two different directions.
Yeah.
So for me, the gauge of health, this is where we're going and everything's up and to the right on a broad spectrum, and we're continuing to communicate. That's how I look at it and define it.
Yeah. Love that. I've been married for 13 years. So,
Nice,
I don't know about you, but it's been pure bliss for all 13 years. And ups and downs. I've heard about these things. You can listen to episode 1 of this season and you can hear me with my wife. And I got feedback. So they're like, hey, I heard the episode where your wife interviewed you. I can tell that she doesn't take any crap from you. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty accurate. I'm like, yep, that's a very good way to summarize at a very, very small way of summarizing it. That's great.
Yeah. Love that.
Kyle, what are you afraid might actually be true about you?
Afraid might actually be true. There are dreams and ambitions that I have that I want to hit, that I want to get to. And part of me is fearful of actually getting there and seeing that level of what I want and what I want out of my life and what I want out of my friendships. And it's can I stay that same person, or can I become the person who I need to become to get there? And it's if that are true, to be honest, that's a little scary, because then everything just becomes higher risk. And it's right now I could go and shut my doors, my business down, and 9 people would know.
Yeah.
Right. But if I get to the level where I want to be, 9 million people would know.
Right.
And it's that's a very scary place to be. So if that are true, and if what I see in my brain and write down and how, if that are true, it actually terrifies me.
Yeah.
To think about playing at that level.
Yeah. I really think most people are going to resonate with that.
Yeah.
Because the brain is wired to keep yourself safe. And that is a place that doesn't feel safe for your brain. Like, I don't know how, or, oh, what would I do? Oh, wait, I suddenly have this impact or this level of responsibility. What would I do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for the vulnerability around that.
Yeah, man. Like the higher you get, at least for me, that's how it's been. The higher I've been able to ascend, like, and I mean this in a very loving way. Like, the sophistication that people I work with today are very different than the sophistication of people I worked with when I built cell phone towers.
Sure.
And the higher I get, the more I'm like, oh no, you're going to find out I'm actually a fraud. Like, but it's like, but you're not. You just feel that way because like I haven't accepted the fact that I'm serving these people at this highest level sometimes. And it's like, dude, like you could find out I used to build towers. You could find out I've been divorced. Like you could, but it's like, what's the worst going to happen, dude? And so, 100%. Man.
I like it. The more kind way of saying, and I forget who said it. Might've been Obama, said something like, they're like, you know, he was young when he kind of did what he did. And he like really forget the politics. I mean, obviously he's a politician, but the level of upping the game all the time on a pretty much daily basis for like kind of insane his ascendance to the most powerful position in the world. He said like, act as if.
Act
and
as if.
One of my mentors, he's like, here's the truth. Nobody really knows what they're doing most of the time. which is kind of, you know, like when you look at it that way and you go, oh, that person over there, they had so much success in business. And then when you talk to them and I know a lot of people, like I have clients that I coach that are way more successful than me in terms of the outer thing. And they're like, I have no confidence. I barely know what I'm doing. I run a 200 person team and every single day I'm scared that they're going to figure out that I really don't know any more than they do. Or I actually look at them and think they know more than I do.
Yep.
And they're going to figure it out. And like, that's the thing that I think it's not even a secret, but we sometimes forget when we see these people that like, they have it all figured out and they don't. Yeah. And maybe but even they do, but like we also, and you said this earlier, we also know a lot more than we give ourselves credit for.
Yep.
Outside of the how-tos or like, this is the way to do it. It's like, oh, well, like, what do I actually know to be true? What does my intuition tell me? What does my heart tell me? Yep. Where can I lean into the thing that isn't in the, you know, in a book on a bookshelf? So thanks for that. I really appreciate the vulnerability around that. And now we're going to start to wrap this bad boy up and curious about your kind of like how you see the world, which is, I'm loving this question for you as somebody who was left at a yard sale at 12 weeks old. How do you see the world, Kyle?
I think a couple different things come to mind when you ask me that question. One is opportunity. I think there's more opportunity. I think people today are drowning in opportunity and it's killing them. They're not drowning in like not enough. Like they're not dying because of famine. They're dying because of feast. And I mean that in a way of like opportunity, especially in the business world.
Yeah.
There's more opportunity than most people can eat right now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to eat it all and can't actually get anything done. And so they're losing businesses. They're breaking promises to their spouse. They're doing all these things because there's so much they don't even know where to start. And so I think right now we're in a place where there's opportunity. And you know that saying of, I'm totally gonna butcher this, but it's like strong men create soft times, or like soft men create hard times, or whatever that saying is. Like soft men create hard times create hard men create soft times. And I think we're in that cycle 100%. Where like right now you have a lot of like cultural appropriateness in business, and you have a lot of like softness. And I think we're moving into a season where that's going to shift. It's just natural. It's going to have to. You look at back in 2008 and like, I don't know who's listening right now, but like back in 2008, a lot of the cultural appropriateness we did not care about.
That's right.
We cared about like how to pay our bills.
Yep.
And I think we're going to move back into a season where that's going to become the predominant factor. And it's like having to be able to adjust and shift through changing seasons, I think is going to be the catalyst for people making it through. But in my perspective, man, I just think there's more opportunity that won't be here forever. Mm-hmm. And regardless of who you are, like I know people literally today, I know a guy, his name is Emmanuel. He's from like the middle of Africa, shocked to even have internet. And he grew a multi-7-figure year business, literally with like no shoes on his feet. It's like, I don't care. You have no excuses. And so my view of the world right now is like, no excuses, all opportunity.
Yeah. I'll let no excuses, all opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, Kyle, where can the audience connect with you and find you and interact with you?
Yeah. I'm putting a lot of time right now into my YouTube channel. So if you guys go on YouTube, Kyle
Nice.
Livingston, youtube.com/channel, whatever, /7figure Kyle. Really spending a lot of time there with people. And if you guys are a business owner that, we talk about the data and be able to make decisions from data versus conjecture or emotion, visionaryvitals.com. We've actually built out a full dashboard for you inside of Google Data Studio as a template. You can have that totally for free.
Nice.
And you can just plug everything right in and be able to actually see the numbers in your business. But irregardless, YouTube is going to be the best spot to get some of the fresh content we have coming out.
Love it. We'll throw all that in the show notes for sure. Cool. And Kyle, first of all, I want to thank you. Thank you for having a really improvisational conversation with me and for, sharing your truth about some things. I know it's easy to get on a podcast and be like, yeah, like I'm a badass business owner and I got it all figured out, especially with you. We just met. And I'm fortunate that on this show, people generally show up that way, but you hear some podcasts, you're like, this person's just reciting a script.
Literally.
And I really appreciate you just coming on and do that. And so you've left me, I'm going to speak for myself, with a lot of nuggets, a lot of things to think about. And I'd love if you'd leave all of us with something short and sweet, like something that resonates for you. And it would fit on an Instagram post. So what's like your words of wisdom for us?
Words of wisdom for an Instagram post. Context matters.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't know the context, you probably shouldn't have an opinion.
It's so good. It's so good and so true. The amount I love that so much. This is something that I really had to bust up through a lot of coach training and personal development. And I still struggle with it today, but can you imagine what it would be like if people stopped judging and assessing for even like an extra 3 seconds? And like, hey, like what's actually going on? Like curiosity, what I hear there is curiosity instead of, well, I know the way this should go, or this is the way it has to be done, or I know what this person's doing or is going through. Beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Kyle, we're going to have you come back on again sometime soon, talk more about, and who doesn't want to know more about 7 figures? I mean, without chasing for the money, though, it's like part of the overall thing.
Yeah.
Let's chasing for it.
100%.
Thanks, my friend. It was really good to connect with you. Really appreciate you coming on, and we will have you on again very soon.
Cool. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Kyle.
See you, man.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.